All right. Welcome, everybody, to the week one recap, week two preview episode of our podcast. We're joined, as always, by yours truly, our defending champ, Mr. Cam Cooper, our commish, Mr. Colin Hampton, and new to the podcast, making his first ever appearance, Johnny 3.
Dr.
J3Z.
Johnny.
It's good to have you in the house. Looking forward to you bringing the insight this evening.
I'll try.
So let's get right into it. Let's recap week one. Here, I've got I can pull this up on the screen. Is that visible to the folks at home?
It sure is.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Cool. So we'll just go matchup by matchup, and we can talk about some things. Talk about what people thought. Do some shiner shades, some over unders, whatever we feel like getting into here. So first on my screen, since it's my sleeper app, is my matchup with Mr. Troy Hudson, aka Puka Season. This one did not go so well for Team Fighting Puka, largely based on a poor performance by the Bengals offense, which saw Burrow and Mixon struggle for him. Bright spot, Mike Evans with 15 points. And that was about it until you get down to the defense. He really did not have a strong outing. I expect this team to be a lot better going forward. On the flip side, my team performed pretty solidly. We had a no-show from Sky Moore and Captain Kirk. But other than that, we got some good points up and down the roster. Jake Elliott outscoring Troy's entire team was always helpful. Thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I gotta chime in real quick. This is my first time looking at Troy's team. Troy's fucked. I mean, dude, he has Cooper Kupp and Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Cooper Kupp, when is he coming back? 4 weeks
We
from
don't
now?
know.
At least, yeah.
Minimum,
Well, at
yeah.
least because he got put on the IR, so Aaron Rodgers is out. The Bengals stack, that doesn't look good. But I really do think Joe Burrow is going to make a comeback. I think you can't put that rainy game in Cleveland into too much consideration. But I mean, I'm just looking down his team. I mean, I think Jalen Waddle is going to perform eventually.
Yeah.
Mike Evans.
Yeah.
So
He was missing Christian Watson too.
I mean, Mike Evans. So I heard a thing. Well, I mean, they're off to a good start, but I heard Mike Evans might come out for a trade request. But I mean, if they start off like kind of hot, I don't know. I think Mike Evans just might ride out with Baker Mayfield. But I guess that's a good pick by him.
Yeah, it looked like Baker Mayfield had the first half he didn't get really into it, and then by the second half he looked like he had been the quarterback for a while, but definitely the first half. Week one is always a week for overreactions.
Yeah.
So like I would agree though, Troy's got a lot of work to do. I mean, this was a bad game, but he's got a lot of injuries to important players. So I don't want to overreact, but he might have to make some trades. And then you look at the other side of the game, Nick's running backs really showed up. And I mean, obviously his kicker and his defense probably above average as well. But when you got your bell cows there showing up, it's hard to lose those games, especially when the opponent has just a terrible game and his best players are out.
Yeah, not really Nick had the quarterback running back stack against Troy's quarterback running back stack. I probably 9 times out of 10 you'll take Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon over Kirk Cousins and Madison, but Nick got the best of him. Even when Jamar Chase wasn't playing well, he had his role players step in. Tony Pollard had a big game. ETN popped off too. Yeah, I mean, Joe Burrow is like 1-4 versus the Browns all time, which is kind of crazy to think about. But he loses that game 80% of the time that he plays the Browns. So I wanted to ask you guys as part of a new session or a new segment on the show, panic meter for Troy's team right now. He started out 0-2, lost to the median as well on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being smoking a joint on the beach with Snoop Dogg, 10 being a full-on anxiety attack. Where do you guys rate Troy's team right now in the panic meter? Early reaction.
I'd go with a 6. I mean, it's early, which is beneficial, right? It's only week one. But I think the injuries are to key players, right? Guys who he took, especially Cooper Kupp, his first rounder. I think he's going to have to be active on the waiver wire this week and probably make some moves, make a couple acquisitions. So that's the only reason it's not any higher, just because I think he's got time. But on the flip side, he's got a lot of ground to make up after just 1 week.
Yeah, I would go a little bit higher than that. Just because again, with the overreaction, it's easy to say 10 panic meter, he's got a, fire sale or whatever. But he's got plenty of good players still available. And when his best players might come back, he'll still have maybe some ground to cover or, time to recover. It's not a full blown panic attack, but I'd say maybe a 7.5, even an 8.
I'm gonna have to go 4. And the only reason I say that is, I mean, you look at these players that are out for a long time, Cup and Rodgers. I mean, Rodgers, I feel like you just gotta take that with a grain of salt because that was his backup quarterback anyway. I mean, does that really hurt him? I feel like that doesn't really hurt him that much. You can't really look at that Rodgers injury and say that hurts him because obviously I think you're going to go with Joe Burrow week to week until that bye, or maybe Aaron Rodgers had a better matchup than Joe Burrow that week. But I feel like Joe Burrow was the main play regardless of Aaron Rodgers' health. So I feel like that doesn't really matter. I mean, obviously Cup doesn't help at all, but looking at his running backs, that's kind of a weird situation. Well, I mean, I like wow, how do you pronounce his name? Pacheco? Yeah, it is Pacheco. Is that right? Pacheco?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're kind of running back by committee. So, I mean, who else is in the Kansas City depth chart with Pacheco? Isn't it
McKinnon and
McKinnon.
Clyde.
Yeah, so
And he has McKinnon, yeah.
It's
and he
Pacheco's backfield to take over, but those two other guys
Yeah.
will be always there for some extra yardage or third down work,
I mean, I'm gonna keep it at a 4. I mean, slight panic, but not horrible.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I mean, Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon combined for 12 points, almost 12 points off week. But you look at other pieces on his roster, right? Gus Edwards probably going to be the starting guy in Baltimore now that J.K. Dobbins is out, right? He's going to perform better next week. Also, Daniel Jones is Troy's actual backup. Aaron Rodgers was his third quarterback, so he's going to be fine in QB position.
Okay.
I remember
also
giving him shit for taking 3 quarterbacks.
And Puka, he has on his bench who's gonna play even when Cooper Kupp's out. So he has the pieces there. I think he just had an off week. Granted, he lost by 40, but I think he'll bounce back. I think he's at a 3 or 4 on a panic meter.
Bro, that guy had 15 targets. That's unreal.
Puka Nacua?
Yeah, that's unreal. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Who is it? Van Jefferson's on that team, right?
Yeah, but he dropped like every ball that was thrown to him.
No way. Go Gator.
Well, not really, but yeah.
All right, let's move on to our next matchup. We had Rob with a 14-point victory here over Mr. Applebaum. Big week from Eckler was not enough to put Applebaum over the top. Calvin Ridley and the Dallas defense largely Rob's strategy there to get the dub.
Yep. I think this was the closest game, and it was still like 14 points or something. And the only thing I have here, obviously, Eckler is Eckler. Rob's defense showing out, but I think this is the Calvin Ridley game, showing up, saying, "Look, I am still an elite receiver, and he will be elite the rest of his career," in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Nick.
I didn't really believe in Ridley, to be honest. I thought that with a year off, he was going to be rusty at least the first few weeks of the season, but clearly not. I don't know if Rob is going to get 36 points from his defense every week. So in another week, that's probably enough to put him, under the median and to take an L head to head here. But lucky performance combined with some poor showing by his opponent was enough to get it done.
I just saw this. Actually, Aaliyah just sent it to me. But no team has ever lost 40-0 or worse, lost the sack battle 7-0 or worse, lost the turnover battle 3-0 or worse, had a blocked field goal return for a touchdown and threw a pick six in the same season. The Giants did it in the same game.
First
Who
game.
sent that to
So
you?
it's on the Athletic, but my girlfriend sent it to me, Aaliyah.
Wow. Yeah, it sounded like a girl name. I'm like, girls sending stats, that's unreal. My
Keeper
girlfriend
status.
sends me screenshots of her team, and she's like, who's Tyreek Hill? She like literally just went by who's the best looking player. I'm like, dude, Tyreek, I don't think Tyreek Hill is that good of a looking guy. But yeah, that's crazy that she's sending you stats like that. That's cool,
Yeah.
Colin.
She's a Bills fan, so she's got
Oh,
like the
really?
sports stuff kind of on her Instagram feed. Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, I mean a couple players on both teams that I kind of want to see how it plays out for the rest of the season, right? DeAndre Swift doesn't look like he's the guy in Philly and the running back position. Only one carry, one reception, and I think Rob spent a fifth or sixth round pick on him. For Alex too, I mean, you got a couple. I mean, who knows? I still believe in Garrett Wilson. I don't know what he looks like in the offense with Zach Wilson at quarterback now. Um, Dalton Kincaid didn't really have a great game. He spent some pretty draft capital on him too. So a couple of players on both sides who probably would have thought would have performed better. And then you have question marks around them for the rest of the season. So, yeah, interesting game on both sides. But yeah, I'm glad Rob got to pull it out. I mean, Anthony Richardson looks like him, shows up week one. Granted, they lost, but he looks like he could be QB1 for a lot of teams. So he's got some talent in the quarterback position for folks who might be hurting that QB later this season.
Yeah, I guess this is kind of unrelated, but who do you guys think? This is, I guess, non-fantasy, but like as far as the best rookie performance week one, like I mean, I think it has to be AR-15. Well, it's not AR-15 anymore, but Anthony Richardson. I mean, I feel like no QB really showed out, but I feel like you kind of have to give that to Anthony Richardson, right?
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean,
I
Bijan
mean,
Robinson had himself a game.
I'm talking about
So
QBs,
did
rookie QBs.
sorry, yeah, Anthony Richardson definitely got to be easily.
Yeah. Yeah. Bryce Young looked ass.
Yeah, I think Stroud probably played better than his like stat line looked.
Yeah, I
But
feel like
he's
he's just
also
really conservative. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Those were
I'm
the only
curious to
three, right?
see. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what Rob's running back room looks like over the course of the season. I mean, the good news about Swift maybe not being the guy is that Rob also has Gainwell, who looks like he might be the guy. But I mean, we remarked on this during the draft podcast as well. It's a very thin running back room that Rob has. He's got a lot of guys who are probably RB2 on their own team, besides Chubb and maybe Gainwell. So, I mean, if for example, if Chubb were to miss time, I don't really like starting anybody besides Gainwell probably moving forward. Certainly once Kamara comes back and Williams in New Orleans is splitting time. So I mean he might have to use Anthony Richardson as a trade chip at some point to get a true RB1 from somebody. It'll be interesting to see how that develops over the course of the season.
I want to put in one more. What were you gonna say?
Well, just we mentioned when we were talking about Rob's team, he had like 3 receivers through the first like 17 rounds, and then his last round pick, Rashid Shaheed, had a game. 16.5 out of his last round pick. That's impressive. That's some good draft work right there from Rob.
Yeah, I just want to say, obviously, heavily invested in the San Diego game as a Dolphins fan. I wonder how that Kellen Moore offense is going to be week to week. I don't know if they're going to be that RB heavy based off of defense. I don't know if that was just something that they saw in the Dolphins defense, but obviously they ran Eckler to the ground, like literally. I mean, he's questionable for next week. I know he hurt his ankle. And then Joshua Kelly balled out too. But I just don't know if that's going to be a week to week thing for the Chargers offense.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean,
Yeah.
Eckler was getting big chunks, so you got to go back to it if he's getting, big run plays like that constantly. So that's why
I'm
I think they're
assuming they're
going
to go back. Yeah, I think they're going to end up going to it. I think that the announcers kept on harping on their offensive line being the strength of that offense. So,
I mean, if you look at the carries, though, I mean, they split carries. Eckler had 16, Josh Kelly had 16. So,
would that be a play next week to start both?
Who do they play? I don't know.
Got him.
Yeah,
I was
I mean,
reading.
yeah.
I was reading
Oh,
though
dude,
that
they play the Titans. The only reason I know that is obviously I live in Nashville, so I looked at the Titans home game, and it was at that they're playing at Tennessee.
I saw one report that Eckler might have, whatever his injury was, that he might have hurt himself in the first half, and potentially Kelly got more carries as they were trying to lighten Eckler's load in the second half. So that'll be an interesting one to see too, how they split carries over the next few weeks and whether Eckler, gets more volume or whether it is more of a 50-50 backfield. All right, Mr. Kamish, your victory, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Eric had 2 goose eggs, so that's helpful. I think Higgins and Drake London, 2 big receivers, not getting any work done, so that's really helpful. But then Christian McCaffrey showing why he is I guess he was the 3rd overall pick in our league. But he's just doing Christian McCaffrey things. I mean, one run can really help a stat line, but it was like a 60-yarder, and then the rest of it is just chunk after chunk. So I mean, Christian McCaffrey is legit, and I'm gonna ride his fantasy dominance every single game week. Devontae Smith is gonna get the looks with AJ Brown, and then Herbert. I'm really hoping he can have a consistent year this year. He fell off a little bit last year, but overall, I mean, my best players were my best players, and that's what I need him to do.
I mean, T. Higgins 0 for 8 on receptions. That's not going to happen again. But you know,
No.
you got to have questions about what's going to happen with that. That's a tough way to start the season.
Do you think London ever gets just one target in a future game? That's hard to imagine too, that Drake London only gets one look during a game.
I mean, playing the
That's
Panthers.
concerning.
I mean, playing the Panthers, they kind of had the game. The game script kind of didn't really favor throwing the ball a lot. But I agree. I mean, you want to get your number one guy more looks than just one look.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
What's funny is I was actually texting Eric during the draft because me and him were right next to each other, so we can kind of spit off who we were going to draft, and it wasn't going to affect either of us. But he was like, he was thinking about Drake London. I'm like, the only reason I don't like him is because of Ritter, and I usually go off a wide receiver strategy. Is like I have to at least somewhat like the quarterback to draft that wide receiver. I cannot go with Desmond Ritter with that offense. I love Kyle Pitts, obviously as a Gator fan, but I just cannot trust Ritter at all to throw the ball. And that's why I'd even like Bijan Robinson, honestly. But I mean, he looks like he might be a stud, but I don't know. Two Atlanta Falcons in my starting lineup. I don't like that.
Yeah, I didn't realize he had that Falcon stack. That's surprising to see that now. I think they just wanted to give Bijan his first NFL game, give him all the work. And then they'll get back to maybe balancing the offense there. But I was just as surprised as everyone else to see 2 goose eggs from those 2 receivers specifically.
Yeah, and Colin, your best Chicago Bear might be on the bench here, and Roshan Johnson. He looked pretty darn good. As a Packers fan, I watched that Packers Bears game, and just about the only thing that Bears fans were happy with on their offense was Johnson's performance.
And that was arguably all in garbage time. The game had been decided by the time he was really getting all that work. I mean, that is a good stat line for a rookie, and that running back room has 4 kind of name running backs, including like Travis Homer and the first 2 guys. But that was all garbage time work. So maybe he moves up the depth chart here going forward, which would be nice.
Yeah. All right, Cam, you want to take us through your shellacking at the hands of Mr. Trevor?
Yeah, I mean, it was a disappointing week. Obviously, J.K. Dobbins out for the season. That hurts. But I mean, tats off to Trevor. I mean, Deshaun Watson balled out. Aaron Jones. I mean, all of the players he needed to ball out. Amon-Ra had a great game 1. Chris Olave. Everybody played well. In the flex too, defense kind of balled out. My defense not so much. I mean, I'm a little bit. Well, I guess I'll get to this question after I talk about my team. But yeah, really disappointing week one, I would say. Nobody performed better than expectation with the exception of Brees Hall, and he got most of those yards on the first 2 carries. I think he had 2 carries for 105 yards, and then he finished off with 8 carries for 25 yards. So happy to see that he's kind of back in football shape, and he's probably going to play well. But the only real bright spot on my team, except for my kicker, maybe. And I see Jordan Love played well on the bench too, which is good, but I can only start one quarterback at a time. So, yeah, I mean, Romeo Dobbs played well too, but I'm a little bit concerned. I mean, so I'll go into the next panic meter. I'm gonna use my own team here. Obviously losing J.K. Dobbins. I'm looking at my running back depth chart, and it's really not that great either. I got Kenneth Walker and Brees Hall, but then after that, Rashad Penny, Deion Jackson, who might not be the starter come week 4, week 5. So, out of 1 to 10, I'm probably at a 5 right now, just because, don't have a lot of depth at running back. But I want to get y'all's perspective too on the panic meter.
I'd say right around there. Not as much of a panic as Troy, in my opinion, because I think, you only had one guy go out. You still have, options at quarterback. You still have very good, productive receivers that can go off. So I'd say 5 is a good panic meter rating. But this game specifically, even with the defensive swing being 20-point difference, you still lost by 20. So that just shows how good Trevor's team showed up. Trevor, it wasn't as much about your team not showing up as Trevor's really showed. He scored 140.
He was the high scorer.
That's not going to happen too often. So I definitely not high on the panic meter.
Yeah,
Johnny,
I mean,
what do you give?
I'd also stay right around the same as Troy. I mean, I don't think I'd panic too much. Obviously, J.K. Dobbins out for the year hurts. But yeah, running back depth is kind of ass. Is not good. I'm looking at running backs, and honestly had no idea Penny was on the Eagles. So that was a transaction over the offseason I didn't know about, because he used to be on the Seahawks, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and so that's a whole running back room, which I feel like I'm kind of skeptical about running backs with running quarterbacks. Like J.K. Dobbins, I was never high on. So DeAndre Swift and that kind of thing. When these quarterbacks are running a lot, obviously you have the option and stuff like that. But I just always feel so skeptical about that. You have Jordan Love, which that could be a play. I feel like he might have a year. But again, it's the first week, so you can't really be too high on a rookie quarterback balling out like that. Well, not a rookie, but his first NFL game. You can't be too high on that, I feel like. I mean, I wouldn't panic too much. I mean, I guess you still have really good wide receivers. Yeah, Michael Thomas honestly looked like he kind of resurrected his career. He looks like he might be a thing. AJ Brown, shout out to Chase Markham. He's right here smoking a bowl. He's a huge Ole Miss guy. Yeah, he's AJ Brown. AJ Brown. Yes, sir.
What's up?
Wait, does he live in Nashville now?
Yeah, me and him are roommates.
Hell yeah.
Shit.
One of the main reasons I actually moved up here was Chase. But yeah, his fantasy team, he has AJ Brown. He's always drafting AJ Brown, Metcalf every single year because he's an Ole Miss dick sucker. But but anyways, yeah, I like the wide receivers. I wouldn't panic too much.
I'm gonna go just below my panic rating for Troy. I'm gonna give you a 5. I mean, Dobbins out for the year when running back was probably your shakiest position doesn't help, but I think there's options on the waiver wire, just like there was for Troy. I do think, particularly on your bench, I think there's a lot of guys who were arrow pointing down after this week in terms of how high I was on them versus how high I am now. I think Michael Thomas, his arrow is pointing down for me after week 1. Olave looked more like the guy in New Orleans to me than Michael Thomas, and you have injury concerns with him. Gabe Davis really didn't get a ton of looks. Obviously, they're playing a really good defense, so maybe he'll look better. Jordan Love looked better than expected, but hard to kind of find someone else on your bench. Dobbs looked good, but also his wide receiver one was out. So I think I have more question marks about your team, Cam, than I did heading into the season after week one. So I'm still going to put you out of 5. How about your thoughts?
Yeah, I would probably say I'm right around a 5 as well. Need to I don't want to jump ship and be like I was Colin after a couple of weeks, but I do have some injuries and some things to think about. I mean, also the running backs that I drafted all have some sort of injury history, right? Dobbins, Walker, Brees Hall, and then Rashad Penny too. Also, all top 4 guys really have some sort of injury history. So I think I'm going to be active on the waiver wire, but also be sending out some trades at some point soon because I don't really want my running back team really to get ahead of me by the next couple of weeks.
Yep. All right, on to our next matchup. Johnny, you unfortunately were the low scorer of the week. Your thoughts on another almost 50-point defeat here?
Dude, it was bad. I'm just looking at my draft strategy was just pick best player available. Add Cup and Saquon Barkley. I was kind of going back and forth, and I guess I'm kind of lucky I went with Barkley. I forgot how the board kind of fell to me. I'm almost positive Cup was available when I picked. I'm pretty sure, right? Was Troy after me?
Yeah.
Troy was
Okay,
after you.
so I don't know how the wide receiver board looked when I picked, but I didn't like those wide receivers. I was very, very high on Amon-Ra, and I was so close to drafting him that early, but I was like, that's too much of a reach, so I went with Saquon. Even though I really did not like that pick, I really did want a wide receiver. So just going through these running backs, Saquon, Jacobs, who else do I have? Najee Harris.
Najee Harris.
And so those 3 power heads, I thought, they're definitely going to get a lot of carries throughout the year. Jacobs with 19, Saquon with only 12. I think that's just because they started passing a lot. I think Saquon will get more usage, but I think obviously the Giants being down the whole game, I think they were trying to push the ball down the field, and I don't know how that. I mean, 40-0. It's not looking good for any fantasy football players on the other side of the ball. And then Najee Harris, that again against a good defense. So I mean, I feel like I should be panicking more than Troy. I mean, not Troy, Cam. Even though my team stayed relatively healthy, um, I had to reach for Jerry Judy. Obviously, he's probably going to be out maybe next week too as well. But I needed another wide receiver one, so that's why I kind of reached for him, even though he was injured. Because if you're going with those 3 running backs to start off with, you need to grab every wide receiver after that, and that's why that draft kind of looked like that because I had no running back. I mean, no wide receivers until the 4th round, so I went wide receiver heavy until I don't know. I think I picked 5 or 6 wide receivers in a row. Addison balled out.
Yeah.
You got Algier too, though, the Falcons running back. That's a nice little
Yeah.
bench
Yes,
option.
yeah,
Mhm.
I saw that, and so I kind of went with. I always used to handcuff my own running backs, and so I looked up a strat that on Reddit. Sometimes I'll go on Reddit and just surf around a little bit, and people are like, instead of handcuffing your own running back, you should start handcuffing other people's running backs, and so that's why I went with Titan, the Titan guy and the Atlanta guy. But I think Algier is supposed to get a few carries. Um, but I don't know. Bijan Robinson looks so good. I mean, 23 points. That looks awesome. But what do you guys think about that? I mean, what was Bijan? I mean, how many carries did he get that game? Because I'm seeing
Um,
15 for Algier, but
10. He
yeah,
outcarried him. Yeah. And got
wow,
more yards
yeah,
than him. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, bench looks okay. Um, Jerry Judy, hopefully he comes back and balls out. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'd be a little bit less of a panic than Cam or right around that area. It's just I'm looking at these running backs, and if they don't perform the way they should, I feel like I can be kind of screwed in that sense.
I think you're all right. You're good. I mean, Jason had Justin Jefferson, who I think could break some records this year. And then Ayuk showed up 8 for 8, 129 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think that maybe that number isn't sustainable, but I think Ayuk's play he'll be the guy there. I know Debo Samuel's there. I know they got Christian McCaffrey, which they use a lot of different ways, but as the pure receiver, I think it's Ayuk's year. And so that's why Jason kind of ran away with this. It was a low scoring game for you. I'm not sure you're going to be scoring less than 65 week on week.
Yeah.
So I think for this matchup specifically, it was, Justin Jefferson being who he is, 150 yards, and then Brandon Ayuk he's going to be the receiver in San Francisco there.
Yeah.
So I've got a shiner shade related to Johnny here. Now that we've covered Johnny and also our high scorer of the week, Trevor, in the prior matchups. Shiner shade, in other words, true or false, for those of you who have not played shiner shade. Will Trevor pick up a loss before Johnny picks up a win? So do you think that's true that Trevor will pick up a loss before Johnny will pick up a win, or false that Trevor will pick up a loss before Johnny picks up a win?
I'm gonna shine that. No team lost in the median this week. I think that's a little bit of an anomaly.
Yeah,
I think
that's
that
crazy.
Inevitably Trevor will lose to the median, and I think this is probably the worst game that Johnny plays all season by far.
Yeah.
I think he's going to get a win. I don't know who he plays next week, but I don't doubt that Johnny will turn it around. I think that Trevor gets a loss before Johnny gets a win.
Yeah, Johnny plays Troy next week, so that's almost a lock for a W.
Do not say that.
And then Trevor plays Eric. So that might be closer than the other matchup, but I'll say Johnny gets the win first, for sure.
Yeah, and I had Dolphins D. I wanted to start them regardless of who they were playing against. I drafted them because I thought they'd be kind of a powerhouse. I wasn't expecting obviously the 200 plus yards on Eckler and Joshua Kelly, but I thought there would have been something there, maybe a little spark, but obviously that -3 probably won't happen week to week with the Dolphins.
No.
I feel a little bit more confident with the Pats next week. No offense, Colin, but I mean, obviously, Mac Jones. I mean, we'll see. I definitely feel a lot more confident with the Dolphins D with Jalen Ramsey, but we'll have to wait for that.
Is he back next week?
No, he's not. He's not back
Okay.
until they're saying right around past Halloween, in between Halloween and
Right, yeah.
Thanksgiving, November.
Like half the season. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Real quick before we go to the next game, I just wanted Johnny was my other panic meter team. Johnny mentioned maybe four or five on the panic meter. What do you guys, Nick, Colin, what do you think about panic meter for Johnny?
I'd say he's panicking the least between Troy, Cam, and Johnny. I'd say it's Troy is panicking in terms of these three. Cam's in the middle. Johnny, I would not be close to panicking just yet.
I agree that Johnny's team to me felt the most fluky of the performances this week. I very easily could have seen this being a 100 to 120 point week for Johnny. I mean, I don't think Gino is going to be held under 10 very often. I don't think Saquon and Jacobs are going to be held under 10 very often. I don't think he's going to have a negative defense very often, right? So I think you can find points here. And he's got some guys on his bench that had good weeks. So I think Sam Howell looked good in his first performance. It wasn't crazy in terms of fantasy points, but I think he's going to have a good year. I think that could be a trade chip potentially down the line for Johnny. So I'm going to put the panic meter at a 3. I think it's pretty low.
Yeah, 3 was kind of the number I settled on too. I think it was a fluky week, and in a week, I mean, in a week where it seems like a lot of folks were struggling at running back, with the exception of Nick and Colin, but there's a lot of folks right now who are hurting at running back. So I think and you have Addison who's popping off. So you're going to hold your own at receiver, and you got studs at running back, so I'm not too worried about it. I'll give you 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
All right.
kind of already mentioned that. Yeah, I was about to say, I kind of already mentioned the panic thing. I'd say a little bit below Cam
Yeah.
as far as panic goes.
Our last matchup of the week, we had another lopsided one here with Josh with his deep bench, playing it to perfection, putting those bench players in the starting spots and taking down Willie 130 to 87 here. Really good week from Tyreek Hill, who obviously is not a bench warmer, but 40 points almost from Tyreek. He got negative points from his kicker, which is pretty hard to do. But also 21 points from the Jets defense. So that was almost half his team scoring right there between Tyreek Hill and the Jets defense.
Yeah, I mean, this is the Tyreek showing out again just because he's 30, or is he 30? He might be 29. Um, like just because he's at that age doesn't mean he can't put up those numbers. And then the other thing I had was Jets defense. If they can shut down the Bills like that, force Josh Allen to have 4 turnovers, I think they're going to be able to compete with anybody. It doesn't matter who their quarterback is. It's too bad that, Aaron Rodgers went down, but that Jets defense looks like it's going to be able to compete with any offense, any field, anywhere all season. So that's what I'm looking at all season.
I mean, I don't think Josh Allen gave them any favors, to be honest. I mean,
No, yeah.
I mean, there were some throws that, I mean, he's just thrown into double coverage and stuff like that. I mean, again, I do respect the Jets D, but I mean, I think Josh Allen had to be a little bit like he was very careless with the ball. I felt like
He was. He definitely was.
so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to play my hand too much here. I mean, I'm sure you guys both saw the Detroit Kansas City game. A lot of Detroit got the win. You got to think that they're going to use Jahmyr Gibbs more than they used him in that game. He looked really good when he touched the ball. So I don't know. There's a lot of things to like about Josh's team, and I don't even think that he really scored to his full potential, with the exception of Tyreek and the Jets, of course. But Justin Fields didn't play that great. Derrick Henry didn't have his best game. Jahmyr Gibbs, I will assume, is going to take off like a rocket ship the rest of the season. I think that Josh's team, I think we were kind of bagging on them after the draft, but after week 1, it looks pretty good, and I think there's a lot more meat on the bone here too.
Oh, and Rashee Rice looked like the only wide receiver that Kansas City has, and Josh had him on his bench. So backing up our theory that Josh had a good bench, I think he had 10 points, and you could easily see him commanding a larger target share going forward. Cam, not to preempt you here, but I kind of want to run a panic meter on Willie's team. I'll go first. I think this is my highest panic meter of maybe any of the teams that lost this week. I mean, Allen should be fine, right? You wouldn't expect him to have 4 turnovers a week going forward. He's playing a really good defense. Charbonnet, not the starter, at least as of now. Harris, not the starter as of now, right? Those are his RB1 and RB2, arguably. I mean, Diggs performed, and he only scored 87 points as a team, right? Debo, 8 points. You could see him getting more, see him getting less. Hopkins probably performed to his max. Waller, I did not think looked that good, and it was a 40-point deficit where you'd expect him to get a lot of targets. He only got 5. Zay Flowers looked good. Kadarius Toney is awful. I mean, McPherson, fine. I mean, his bench, he's got 2 quarterbacks. Neither one of them really gets you excited. I don't think Evan Hull's going to be any good for Indy. I don't think A-Chain is the answer for Miami, at least in the short term. Thielen looked terrible. He's dealing with an injury too. Scantling, I don't know. Do you really trust him in the Kansas City locker room? So, I mean, I don't really see answers for Willie's problems on his roster. And he didn't have any injuries, right? But just I don't know where he's going to get 120 points a week from with this group of players. I would have his panic at like a 8.
That's fair. The way to go down, like you went down the line like that. It's very easy to see what you're seeing there. His RB1 and 2 aren't aren't even RB1 and 2. So I'd say he might be the highest panic meter now that we're doing this panic meter thing. That's it. That's an easy call, I would say.
I mean, his team is gonna sink or swim with the Bills. I mean, you're gonna whatever happens in Buffalo week in and week out is gonna be what's gonna happen to Willie's team, right? He's heavy on the Bills this year. I don't know if it's the best year to be heavy on the Bills in the division that they're in. I guess the Jets aren't as good as they're gonna be, but whenever the Bills have a tough week, especially with Damian Harris there, he's gonna have a bad time, right? So I think there's going to be weeks where they pop off and he drops 130, 140 when Josh Allen does his thing. But yeah, I don't know if I'd put it at an 8, but I'd probably put it at 6.5 or 7.
Yeah, I'd be kind of high on the panic meter. Obviously, those two RBs. I mean, are they even going to score 5 points a week like that? I feel like that's a huge issue if you can't have a starting player, guarantee you at least like 3 to 5 points, which that might. I mean, that's just pretty obvious there. But I mean, as far as wide receivers go, I think he did okay. Zay Flowers, I really wanted to get.
Same.
I think he's going to be a baller, to be honest. Stephon Diggs, I mean, he looked really good last night, and obviously that's going to be Josh Allen's guy. Debo, I feel like it can either be Debo or Brandon Ayuk. It can be either or with Purdy behind center. I feel like Debo might pop up one game, might be Ayuk. So that's okay there. D Hop, I don't know with Ryan Tannehill being the quarterback. Kadarius Toney is a wash. He's gonna be on the waiver wire probably this week, or he should be.
Willie
he
reached
should be. I
for
mean,
him like 4 rounds too early. I don't know if he's going to drop him after week 1.
yeah, I know.
I think that was his 6th round pick, if I remember correctly.
Something like that.
He defended it at the time that he wanted to reach for his guy, but he probably could have gotten him like 4 rounds later.
A quick just question because Johnny's on the call, and 2 rookie receivers who played really well in week 1, I would say by their own right, Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison. Who are you guys high? I know Johnny's probably a little biased because he has Addison on his team, but who are you guys higher on for the rest of the season, Addison or Zay Flowers?
I would say Zay, just because I feel like he's got less competition for targets. I mean, he looks to be potentially already like the first option in that passing offense, whereas you got a lot of mouths to feed for Kirk Cousins. So I think Addison might be the better player over his career, but give me 1 year of fantasy, I'm taking Zay.
I'd honestly say Zay Flowers too. That's coming from me, who has Addison, obviously. So, I mean, yeah, I really do love Zay Flowers. I wanted to get him. I'm very jealous, and I think he's gonna ball out. Really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I have a if we're done with this week, I have a shine or shade that before we go into the next week that I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say. So we have week 1, right? Everybody's pretty much either 0-2 or 2-0. My shine or shade is that 3 teams who made the playoffs last year will not make it this year, and vice versa. So 3 teams who missed the playoffs last year will make it after week 1, early reaction, right? So I'll give you the rundown of who made it and who didn't make it last year. Playoff contenders were myself, Troy, Rob, Willie, Eric, Johnny, Alex, and Josh. And teams that missed were Trevor / my dad, Jason, Colin, and Nick. Shine or shade, 3 teams who made the playoffs this year will not make it, and 3 teams that missed it will make it this year.
I'll shine that. It's just odds. Math plays a role in this one. But based on the panic meter, it looks like Troy might have some work to do. It looks like Trevor / Wayne's team is already one of the better teams. So there's 2, or I guess 1 right away. I'm definitely better than last year because I didn't lose 4 players in the first 4 snaps of the game. So that's another one that adds to math. So just math helps my case here.
Yeah, I was thinking of a similar shine or shade, and I would shine the way you put it there, Cam. I think I would probably, if I had to name the two most likely, I'd say Troy and Willie, probably most likely to miss out. And I could see, another one of those missing out just by mathematics as well. So yeah, I think it's likely that three teams who made the playoffs last year missed this year.
Yeah, I definitely shine on that. Obviously, I might. Well, I mean, it's the first week for me, but Troy might have an issue, and then Willie obviously not looking good. So there's two teams right there, and then one more. I made the playoffs, but I mean, I don't know. I think my team's sitting decent. Who else made the playoffs last year besides Troy and Willie?
Rob, myself, Eric, Alex, and Josh.
Huh. I don't know. Well, there's two teams for sure, so I feel like one of those teams might not make it. So I'd shine that.
That's good.
Yeah,
I
I'll
mean,
yeah, I'll shine that too. I'm just gonna say I'm concerned about my team. I'm definitely probably a last two in, first two out kind of team right now. I would say just after week one. Not really convinced about Jason's team. I know we started out 2-0. I think he was the lowest scoring winner this week. So yeah, I'm going to shine it. I do think that Nick and Colin are much better suited to, position this year to make the playoffs than they were in the beginning of last year. Yeah, not so sure about Willie's team. I think Troy will turn it around. I think he'll be kind of with me in the, on the bubble to get in as of right now, as of week one. Um, I think Trevor's team will do well. I'm not convinced that he's going to be like a top four team, but his team does look pretty good so far. And so yeah, I don't know. I think I'm still kind of convinced, especially with involvement in the league. I'm not sure how if Jason stays as uninvolved as he was during the draft. I think he might miss the playoffs again this year.
Yeah, if he keeps leaving his phone in churches, he's going to miss the waiver wire, and not be able to pick up people. So that could hamstring him. I've got another shiner shade here. So we saw, Aaron Rodgers, Cooper Cup. We saw some major injuries in week one. Shiner shade, we have more than 1.5 major injuries this week. So in other words, two or more major injuries this week as well.
Major meaning like 8+ week out.
Yeah, like big time players having to go on IR or worse.
I'm gonna go with math here again. Just based on math, it's the NFL. Yes, I will shine that more than 1.5 players that are, quality starters will have major injuries. I don't want that to happen. I'm definitely not rooting for that. The last thing you want to see is someone go down, the medical team come out. That's the worst part about every game, but it happens every game. So it's just bound to happen, and it's part of the game. So I'll sign that.
Um, I have no idea. I mean, obviously, you want to say that's not going to happen, like Colin said, but I guess I'll shine that as well. Um, just looking at, and obviously being a Tua lover, you want to expect him to be healthy the whole year. And, just those devastating injuries, I feel like just don't come around a lot. Like you just can't expect to, like, I'm expecting Tua to play all 16 games this year. I really am. I just think last year was very freakish. And, obviously NFL is all about contact. You really don't know what's going to happen week to week, no matter how, how much these guys prevent these injuries. So, I mean, I guess I'll shine it because, I mean, injuries happen. And the whole thing with the turf fields too, that's becoming a thing with Aaron Rodgers. Um,
Sure is.
but I mean, they're saying like no matter if he's on grass or turf, that probably would have happened. He was walking. I think he had a calf strain all throughout camp. That's what I
Yeah.
heard. I don't know if it was the same calf, but
It was. It
um,
was.
it was the same calf.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, that's not good. But
I'm
yeah,
glad it didn't
that
happen to
whole
Burrow because Burrow had a calf as well. So, it could have easily just have been Burrow, but maybe the age difference. I mean, A Rod's 39, Joe Burrow's 25. So
yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna shade it.
And he smokes DMT, so that might factor into it.
And ayahuasca, yeah.
Yeah, he's stoned. I'm gonna shade it. I think that there will be I think there's gonna be one pretty big injury this week. I don't know who it's gonna be. I know there are some folks coming back from injuries. I think Mark Andrews coming back this week. A couple big guys coming back for week 2. I think there's gonna be one. I think it's gonna be big. I think it's gonna be a pretty big player who goes down and gets hurt. But I'm gonna shade it for argument's sake.
I like it.
Can I do one shiner shade?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Colin leading the league in transactions and not making the playoffs.
I will shade the fuck out of that. Hell no.
That's the shiniest motherfucking thing I've seen. Colin, if you lead the league in transactions, you have to make the playoffs.
I will make the playoffs. It's going to happen. I will also lead the league in transactions. That will also happen. But the playoffs, there's no chance I'm going to miss the playoffs as poorly as I did last year, and then also miss the playoffs this year. Which leads me into my shiner shade, kind of a bit of an over under. Last year I asked about, like, will anyone get over 20 wins? You know, someone can go 24-0, meaning someone can go 20-4. Everyone shaded that. So I went down to 18.5. Everyone kind of shined that, but the best record last year was 17-7. Shiner shade, someone will have a better record than 17-7.
I'm gonna shade it. I think just playing the median makes this so tough because it kind of takes luck out of the equation with matchups. So I mean, to have that consistent of a team, like, you've really got to avoid the injury bug, have drafted really well. You got to have a lot of things go right to be over 17-7. I think, I don't know. I don't see anybody's roster, at least after 1 week, that looks to me to be that far ahead of the rest.
That was Josh, by the way. Josh went 17-7 last season.
Yeah, I'm gonna shade that too. I think the person who gets the most wins this year gets 16. I think there's somebody who goes 16-8. I mean, last year was prime example. The winner, I mean, I finished 13-11, right? And I went on to win, right? And then Jason was 11-13. So, like, there was only 2 games between the person who won the league and the person who came in last in the regular season. I think there's just too much parity. Everybody in this league is too good, or at least the players who pay attention to the league. So I think the best team goes 16-8 in the regular season.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off Cam, not the players. I don't know if you meant players by the managers of the team, but I think everyone's a little bit more engaged this year. I mean, and I feel like there might be a couple managers that kind of give out throughout the year and not set their lineups, but I feel like a little bit I feel like everyone's a little bit more engaged this year, which, I mean, I feel like everyone's going to set their lineups, which obviously is going to make it harder for the opposing team to win. So we'll see how that goes. I'm liking how everyone's very invested. The podcast has been great. So yeah, I think I'm going to shade that as well.
And statistically too, I mean, there was a team that had 3 wins last year, right? So, like, there's 2 kind of major outliers. I think that we're going to be more towards for the betterment of the league. I think there's going to be a lot of people fighting for a couple of playoff spots.
Yeah.
So I think just by statistically, there's not going to be somebody who gets more than 17 wins.
All right. And speaking of the median ended up this week being 108. The projected median next week is 112. So shine or shade, the median will go up from week 1 over 108.
I'm gonna bet my house on that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna shine that. I think defense played super well across the league this week. I think offense probably takes a little bit longer to click in general. So another week of offenses getting their shit together. I think the median, and because offensive performance will go up across the league, will go up. 112 feels right. I don't know if it'll go up by more than that, but over 108.
We'll kind of go in a different route from you, Nick. I'll still shine it, but also defense setting in as well. again, being a Dolphins fan, Vic Fangio, first year as a defensive coordinator, you feel like his scheme is kind of hard to get used to. So I feel like the defenses might set in as well. You got to think about that. But I still think just based off of manager play and who I mean you had some devastating injuries. And well, I mean, I guess J.K. Dobbins was the only devastating injury that was, I guess, starting in the lineup. But I feel like everyone will have their their lineups intact this week, and I feel like the median's going to go up. I'm just showing that.
Yeah,
Sure.
me too. I mean, I'm looking back at week 2 of last year. I mean, week 1 was pretty similar. I mean, there's a couple folks who finished under 100. We were pretty much right at 107 week 1. Week 2, there's Colin finished with 63. My dad finished with 96. Everybody else finished above 115. So I think we're going to have a pretty big, if history has anything to say about it, I think offenses are going to start clicking, and we're going to see a pretty big jump in the median this week.
All right, as we think about a week 2 preview, I've got one more shiner shade for you. For historical context, last year after week 1, we had 7 additions where folks spent fab to acquire a player for a total of $69 dollars of fab spent.
Hey.
Shine or shade, more than $69 of fab spent tomorrow morning.
Shine. I think there's a lot of players out there. Kyron Williams, Tutu Atwell, Hunter Henry. There's some players out there that will be bid for, if not already. Definitely more than 7 transactions. Definitely more than $69.
Of course, you're going to shine that, Mr. Transaction Boy. Yeah, you literally got to change your name to Mr. Transactions. Championship. You don't win the championship of the league, but you win the championships of transactions. You probably put $70 on Tutu Atwell right here. So yeah. Honestly, I haven't really looked at the waiver wire too much, so I'm pretty solid with my team. I'm just gonna let you guys know right now. I haven't put out any money for anyone, so I think I'll
That can change though. You have until 3 a.m. for something to happen. So
I know. I think I'm pretty solid.
2 a.m. Central. I'm
Hey.
going to shade that. I'm going to shade that because I think last year was the first year we had implemented fab. I don't think people totally understood the value of the free agent acquisition budget. $10 per acquisition after week 1, I would say, is pretty high on average. Whatever, 7 people for $70 basically. I'm gonna say it's lower. I think there's going to be fewer transactions, and I think there's going to be lower fab.
Well,
I think there will be. Go ahead, Johnny.
I think I guess you can shine that in a way. In reverse direction of Cam. I mean, usually week 1, week 2, week 3, you're gonna have the best waiver wire pickups, and I feel like you can get a pretty good starter on the waiver wire, and that's why I feel like people would kind of run with a high bid just so they can get that player on their team. So I could see why that could be a shine. There are some really good players out there, and that waiver wire kind of skims out throughout the season unless a really bad injury happens. I mean,
sure.
I'm just looking at. No, you're
we
good.
saw
Yeah.
Eric spent like what, $25 on one person the first week, and then $9 on a defense. And he was the one who had used fab before us last, season prior to last. So, we know Eric's gonna ball out. I'm assuming everyone else is gonna ball out because we know Eric likes to splash. So that's kind of why I went with the shade or shine, because if you want a guy, we know this league knows that you have to put more than you think you should. So I think we'll see a bit more craziness at least this week, maybe even going forward here.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting because a lot of teams ended the season with fab still, right? Like most teams did not spend all their fab. So there's more money available to be spent if teams are willing to spend it. Tell me how this looks a year on. Eric spent $25 to drop Christian Watson and pick up Jeff Wilson. I don't think he would do that this year.
Oh man.
At the time, Jeff Wilson with the Niners, that was a big addition. So
I thought I had Jeff Wilson. So did I drop him throughout the season? I guess you guys can't tell, but I'm almost positive I had Jeff Wilson in my lineup for
You
a
might
moment.
have, but not week one because
Yeah.
Eric spent
Yeah.
$25 on him.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. 6 of the top 13 trending players on Sleeper right now are available on the waiver wire. So I think there's some highly sought after players
Yep.
that could find new homes tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
100%.
So I don't know if we need to go matchup by matchup, but maybe I'll just share my screen and we can kind of look generally at the matchups next week and let me know if there's like a matchup or two that's sticking out to you or anything you've got your eye on as we head into week 2.
Well, I like the fact, I think it's very interesting. Cam said it. It's an anomaly that there are no teams that won their game but lost the median or vice versa. That's crazy. Everyone's 2-0 or 0-2. So going into week 2, you have 2 matchups that are 2-0 teams. You have 2 matchups that are 0-2 teams, and then you have 2 matchups that are 2-0 versus 0-2. So will we end up with a 4-0 and an 0-4 team? Maybe those
Probably.
are some of the things we can look at. Yeah.
Yeah.
Statistically, yes, we will. But
Well, you never know because
Yeah.
like Nick is
Oh,
playing
yeah,
Josh
I guess
right
you're
there
right.
at the top.
I guess you're right. Yeah.
Nick could beat Josh but lose to the median, and so
Yeah.
he's 3-1. Do we like? What do we think? And then same thing. The next matchup, me and Rob, 2-0 versus 2-0. Like,
Yeah.
do we think
But
we'll have a 4-0?
you would expect one of the teams that moves to 3-0 to also beat the median, and you would expect one of the teams that moves to 0-3 to also lose to the median, if not both, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
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 For me, I've got my eyes on the 0-2 matchups, right? I think if you're 2-0 and you fall to 2-2, you're still very much in the playoff mix, as Cam said, like right around 500 might get you in any given year. But if you fall to 0-4, you've got a very big hole to start climbing out of. And I think the panic meter is going to ratchet up on those teams. So I feel like the teams that are 0-2 are kind of in need of a win, and seeing 2 matchups of teams in need of wins will be exciting to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you look at, I mean, out of the 2 0-2 matchups, I would say me and Alex and then Troy and Johnny. I mean, who do you think out of these 4 teams needs a win the most this week?
I would say Troy just because I put his panic meter up high, but I would also say Willie as well because we know he doesn't even have any running backs.
Yeah.
Like he like literally doesn't have running backs. So, I think Troy and Willie are the teams that need to get at least a median win this week.
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously you just go with the teams that higher on the panic meter. So yeah, Troy and Willie. Yeah, Willie with the 2 running backs. I mean, you need to pick up all you can get. You want to hope for a good Buffalo win, a high offense, high offensive win. But I mean, is he even going to go with Damian Harris now? So that's something that you got to think about.
I'll take the opposite approach. I'll say Johnny, because I had him lowest on the panic meter, and it sounds like he might be standing pat at the waiver wire. But if he then falls to 0-4, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it wasn't just a fluky week. Maybe there's some work that needs to be done with that team. So I think Johnny needs to prove it. That it was a fluke this week.
I like it.
Anything else we want to touch on, or shall we wrap this up?
Yeah, I think
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Cam. No,
I
I
was
was
gonna
just
say,
gonna say we're just past the hour mark. So
hour.
I think
Yeah, I had
think
one.
These are always gonna be an hour. Sorry,
Yeah.
Cam, but yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, I had one over under, and this is kind of an. I have no basis for this number, so please let me know if this is totally off. But I think I'm talking about go forward because I know we had a couple trades already this year and the draft and already, but over under 9.5 trades between teams between now and the end of the season.
What do we know? I mean, I think the trade was lower than that last year. I would say there was probably about 5 to 7 last year.
I don't know. I think Nick was involved with at least 3 trades, right?
Yeah, I had a few. I think yeah, if you count draft trades, I think I did 5 last year.
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh, damn. Okay. Wow.
I'm gonna take the
Um,
under. I
Five
feel
yourself.
like, yeah, I think there's a handful of people in the league who I don't think pay enough attention to really be interested in trading, and a handful of people in the league who historically don't like to trade. So you've got probably a third of the league that you're dealing with most of the time if you're trying to make a trade happen. So it's just hard to make a lot of trades happen. So I'll take the under.
I think I had literally one of my first big trades last year. I got George Kittle. I don't know if it was with any of you
It was with
guys.
me.
Yeah, and I think that ended up being an okay trade, but when I was in the playoffs, he didn't. I think it was Christian McCaffrey and Kittle. I had that little San Fran stack, and they didn't do anything. And then of course the next week they pop off, and Kittle ended up getting like a 30 piece, which is a week too late. But that was one of the bigger trades I've ever had playing fantasy football, and I think we've been playing in this league since what 2011 or 2012. So yeah, I just generally don't like to trade. But if I see something that I like, I mean, I'm interested sometimes. But I know Colin, there's a lot of people, Robert. I mean, all you guys like to trade. So
yeah, one year I specifically tried to trade with every single team
yeah,
in the league, barring Alex, because he made it very clear that he was just not going to trade with me or anybody. So I might have a similar strategy this year. I might force people to make some moves. Nick and I have already had some trade talks, both rejected, pretty quick trade talks, but I can guarantee I will be sending out some feelers to teams throughout this week and throughout the season because I mean Willie needs to make something happen. That's for damn sure. I
but
think Troy
Colin,
needs to
you gotta look at your team. If you end up starting 4-0, why are you gonna start trading people away? Like
because I might get value, right? Like that's the whole point. I think I could increase my value. So what I sent, Nick wants DJ Moore from me. So I threw him into my trade, but I wanted more from Nick. He
yeah,
wants DJ Moore. You got to take that. You got to take advantage of that. So, you know, Willie needs a running back. I have 4 good running backs. Nick has 4 good running backs. Willie's got to do something. And
yeah,
if he plays a hand where he's giving up more than he gets, well then I won the
yeah,
trade. Whether I like those players or not, I'm getting the value that I think I need.
yeah.
So, we'll see here. But this was a good pod. Thanks Johnny for coming on. I think we went over a lot, and maybe next week we go over some of the waiver wire stuff because it'll actually have come through. And
Yeah,
we
dude,
have
it's
Willie
awesome.
next week as well.
Yeah, dude, it's awesome. Thanks for having me, boys. Um, yeah, looking forward to next week. Who's on the pod
Yeah.
next week?
Willie.
Willie? I
Yeah.
think that's the guy in the text that I said I've never seen his face. I literally don't even know who. Like, it's Willie and someone else I don't know. I think
Hi, Jason.
Jason. Yes, are those UF homies?
They're both Gainesville people. I'm pretty sure Jason lives in Georgia and
He lives
Willie
in
lives
Atlanta.
in.
Yeah.
All right, before we dox anyone, let me end this recording.
Okay, yeah, yeah. All right.